Okay, good morning and welcome to Just Daf It, Daf Yomi Shir. We're learning Maseches Yevamos, Daf Ayin Aleph 71. We have a fantastic shir for you today. We're going to be discussing more about Arelus, the situation of not having a bris milah, what that entails. A child before he has his bris, is he considered an RL? Is he not considered an RL? That's the main discussion today. In Iyot Ben Sion, we're going to be discussing more what we discussed yesterday in Iyot Ben Sion, where we laid out the following investigation, the following chakira, whether the mitzvah of Mila is just a mitzvah essay or it's also an Isra essay. There's an Avera if you don't do a Mila. We know there's an Avera, you chayav kares, but does it have the din of an Isra essay? We explained some halachos in Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. Today we have a Gemara that seems to say, like Rashi. We're going to try to explain Rabbeinu Tam's shita in this Gemara, and based on that, come up with an interesting distinction in halacha between a mumur and a mashumud. Um, what is the difference between a mumur and mashumud? These are two types of people that are going against Judaism or common practice of Judaism. What's the difference between them? Does it play a role in explaining Rabbeinu Tam Shita? Yes, it does, and I'll explain it to you how. And it's going to play an important role in understanding a halacha. We're going to relate this because I give a shir, if you didn't know, on Shulchan Aruch Yomi. Today we're learning Siman Ted and Hilchos Tzitzis. Yesterday I had a great shir, Shulchan Aruch Yomi Ian, about the chiyuv of wearing your tzitzis out. Do you have to wear them out or not? Spoiler alert. You're supposed to wear them in, at least according to my calculations. Today we have a fasting, because I venture into halakha. I looked up the Shulchan Aruch when it comes to these halakhas about mumur and meshumud, eye-opening chidushim in a halakha, based on what I'm saying. The Shulchan Aruch and the Torah seem to have confused these two words, and there's a reason not to confuse them, a very important reason not to confuse them. It'll be a big nafkamina, a big practical ramification on halacha. This distinction between mumur and meshumud, you're not gonna want to miss it. And today, hopefully, will be the last day. You'll see me with this big beard of mine. Hopefully, I'll look more groomed and hygienic tomorrow. So, thank you for staying with me, even though my beard looks terrible. All right, let's go on. Let's start from the top of Ayin Aleph and Aleph. The fourth line. Right, we're going back to these psukim about Korban Pesach. We know the Korban Pesach. If you're an RL, you can't eat a Korban Pesach. You don't have a bris milah. And if you're a ben nechar, should explain someone who's a mumar. Basically, he gives up the Torah. He's a ben nechar. We'll explain that more. It really means a son of a nechar, of a nachri, a goy. He's really Jewish. His mother's Jewish, so technically he's Jewish, but he's a son of a goy. He keeps Christmas, let's say, right? He has a Christmas tree, and he lights Hanukkah candles. So, called ben nechar comes to say he can't eat a Korban Pesach ben nechar. Ostensibly, it means a mumar. Mumar means you trade your religion, you trade Judaism for Christianity or a different religion. Because of Rachmana Arel, if you just said an Arel can't eat Korban Pesach, that would have said that's Bishum Demois, because he's disgusting. An Arel, someone, this is a proven fact. I think they mentioned this in Seinfeld. If you ask women which looks nicer, can I even say this on camera? With a bris milah, without a bris milah. To quote the words of Elaine Bennett, she said, it has more personality, the penis, what? with the circumcision, without circumcision. So the Gemara says nice. The Gemara said it before Elaine Bennett. It says it's disgusting. Doesn't look nice. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. You could decide it yourself. But it says it's more repugnant, more disgusting. So you can't eat a Korban Pesach. Benechar has a bris milah. He keeps Christmas, right? He's not disgusting. We eat kasav rachmana called benechar. We just said benechar mishum de'en li bol shamayim, because his heart is not to heaven. His heart is celebrating Easter. He's celebrating Christianity. Aval Arel the li bol shamayim. Arel, ostensibly, he is someone who is in line. He just doesn't have a bris milah. So it makes sense according to Rashi's explanation that it's an onus. He doesn't have a milah. He couldn't get a bris milah because the blood in his family doesn't clot. So he really keeps Torah and mitzvah. So is libel shamayim emolo. So there he should be okay to bring a Korban Pesach. Sricha, therefore, both of them can't shech the Korban Pesach, can't eat the Korban Pesach. Mimenu, once we're darshing the pasuk Korban Pesach, we'll darshan some more. Mimenu lamali. It's this extra word mimenu, which is a limitation. Lamali. The Rabbam, Rabbi Yitzchak, for a later Joshua, we'll see Ayin Dalet and Aleph, where he darshans this. We'll get there and we'll see what he darshans from there. Amar Mar. So we go back to our original machlokus between Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. What's the makor? What's the source? By Truma and Arel doesn't eat. Akiva Omer Eino Sarech Haregu Omer. We already analyzed Rabbi Eliezer. Now we're getting to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says we don't need the Gzeira Shava of Toshav and Sakir. Haregu Omer Ishish. It says by Truma Ishish. An extra word Ish. L'Rab was Arel. To say not only just someone who's a Mitzora or a Zah, but even if you're a Tameh, even if you're an Arel, you also can't eat Kachim and Truma. Ve'ema L'Rabos Onen. Why do we say the extra word Ish comes to include an Onain? An Onain, someone who's just buried their dead person, one of the Zayin Krovim. Didn't bury the Zayin Krovim. They are waiting to bury him, so therefore they can't eat Kachim and they can't eat Ma'aser Sheni. So they also an Onain can't eat Truma. So the Gemara says, no, Amar Krav, it calls Zar. Zar is a stranger. It says a stranger is someone who doesn't have a bris milah. Aninos, you're not considered a stranger. The Gemara is the aim of lola arelos. Maybe a stranger means to exclude someone who's an arel. Maybe someone who doesn't have a bris milah is a stranger. Haktiv ishish. No, it says the ishish to include him that he could eat. He can. I'm sorry that an arel can eat this. Why do we include one and exclude the other? Mistaber arelos have a little buye. Makes sense. We include an arel. He can't eat kachim. He can't eat truma. Shekain masim krutim bedavar avan, which stands for mechusar ma'isa. There's 5 things about him. Chumras about him. He hasn't done it. He's lacking in action. He has to do a bris milah. Ma'isa begufo. The action that is necessary is on his body. He has to fix his penis. Anush karis, and he's liable to karis if he doesn't do a bris milah. V'yesh another thing. A D word applied before Matan Torah by Avram Avinu. Milah zchar v'avadim ma'keves. Right. Milah is something which not only does it hold back you, but also if your sons and avodim k'nainim don't have a bris milah, you can't eat your Korban Pesach either. Adarabah, maybe the opposite. Aninos halir bu'ih, which say Aninos should be an onain, shouldn't be able to eat truma. Shkein yeshem b'chol shai. It has other chumras. Aninos applies potentially all the time. Any one of your zayin krom could die. But heges by nashim and nashim. It applies to women also. You can't fix yourself, right? Mila, you could just go and do a bris milah. Here, there's nothing you can do. You have to wait 7 days till until Avelos or Aninos is over. So Marzahanak Nafishin. These are more. 5 chumras is more than 3. Rav Amar Bala Hanak Nafishin Nami Lo Matzas Hamris. He says even without comparing the chumras, you still can't say that Ariel should be allowed to have truma. Amar Kra Ishish Ezu Davar Sheishna B'ish Ve'eno B'isha. It says the word Ish, a man. That's where we're learning it from. So what is specific that applies to a man and to a woman? Heavy Omer is Arelis. Arelis doesn't apply to a woman. A woman doesn't have to do a bris milah. All right. Rabbi Akiva, Hay Tosha V'Sachim Ma'avid. Rabbi Akiva, if you were wondering why I was laughing, I mean, you can interpret it any way you want. Anyway, let's go on. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva, Haitosha V'Sachir Ma'avid. Rabbi Akiva, right? He doesn't have the Gzeira Shava. What does he do with that? Amar Rav Shemaya Lasui Arvi Malva Givonim Mal. That comes to include the Gzeira Shava. Does come to include something. He doesn't not hold to the Gzeira Shava. He holds there is a Gzeira Shava Tosha V'Sachir, but all that comes is to say that if you're an Arab who has a mole or a Givoni were a certain type of people, no Givon, certain places in Israel and the West Bank, let's say, that have a bris milah, still they can't eat the Korban Pesach. And where it says, V'hani mulinin, why would we even think that they're called to have a bris milah? V'hat, now we have a Mishnah, Mesachas Adarim, Konim, Shaninen Ela Reilim. You say, I'm not going to get any benefit from Arelim, from people without a bris milah. Mutar Ba'arle Yisrael, right? We assume that you're allowed to get hana even from Jews, even if they don't have a bris milah. Even when goyim have a bris milah, Goyim are called arelim, whether they have bris milah or not. A konim sheninela mulin. If he says I'm not going to get hana from people with bris milah, mutter mulay of the chacham. He could get hana even if the goyim have a bris milah. The hospital circumcises him. It wouldn't make a difference. Also, Ali Yisrael, because the Gemara explains the word mulim goes on Yisrael, the word arelim goes on goyim, whether they have a bris milah or not. El asuye. So according to Akiva, we can't say it's to include that. El asuye ger shemavel atava. Akiva comes to include a ger that did a milah but not a tvila. If he did a milah, not a tvila, it's not a complete ger. You might think he's a ger. The tvila is also essential, like we said before in Ian Ben Sion. It is the only thing that is essential. A katan shenolad doesn't say the case of taval v'lo mal, right? Only mal v'lo taval. A katan shenolad shumol, and also a case of a katan, a child that he was born already with a circumcision. Some people are born with the foreskin removed. I was born like that, actually. It's true. A little arla. That's what Pesach Kron, who was my moel, said. He said it's very hard to do a bris milah on me because basically there was no foreskin, so it was very hard to do it. But basically, I would be considered in the classification of nolat mole, maybe. Depends how much arla there was. Because Savar the reason Rabbi Akiva says as a problem is because there's an opinion that says if you're born with a milah, you still have to remove some blood from the area in order to consider it a valid milah. Rabbi Lezer arguing Rabbi Akiva l'taimei Amar ger shema v'lo tavel ger ma'aliyah, who we learn in Daf Mem Zayin. Rabbi Lezer has a shita. If you do a milah without its tefillah, you're still considered a ger. Because he wouldn't come to include that case because it's obvious he's considered mole. You don't have to take dam bris. That's not does not hold you back from having called a good milah. Lezer hi ish ish my avid like. So now Lezer, what does he do with the extra word ish? So the Gemara says dir with Torah klashim adam. Sometimes the way he talks like people talk. People reiterate what they say. They say a man, a man. They want to impress it upon you. So they repeat what they say. It's not significant to make a drasha. Rav Chama bar Ukva. Chama Rukva asks a fundamental question. Katal arel mahula sucha b'shemen shel truma. A katan, a minor. We're talking about presumably before the 8th day. He's just born, right? And he doesn't have bris milah yet. Are you allowed to anoint him with shemen shel truma? We know the Gemara learned in other places that sicha is kishtia, that if you smear, you anoint yourself in oil, something like that. On your skin, it's like shtia. The Gemara learns. The Gemara Numa says that. The Gemara Shabbos says that it's like you did that. So therefore, just like you can't eat or drink truma wine, you can't anoint yourself in oil, shemen zayis, oil, olive oil. A little baby, you want to smooth their skin out. You want to pamper them a little bit when they're young. Can you do that or not? Can you smear that olive oil on them to make their skin even smoother? Are you allowed to do that? He's an arel, and arel is not allowed to. Is he considered an arel or not? Arelos shlo b'zman ma'achva, lo ma'ach. Arelos, when it's not the time to do a bris milah, is that ma'ach? Is that hold him back or not? Amr B'Zeira Tashmar. B'Zeira tries to bring a proof. Only ala milah zcharav b'shas asiyah, v'avodah b'shas achila. By Karan Pesach, right? It's 2 psukim. We know the halach is that if your sons and your avodim don't have a bris milah, it holds you back from being able to eat Karan Pesach and the shech Karan Pesach. So one pasuk by his sons, it talks about shchita. It says you can't shech Karan Pesach if your sons are not mol. And it talks about when you come to eat in the Karan Pesach, it says that your avodim have to be mol. How do you know that both of them, right? But the milah of both the sons and the avodim apply both at the shas shchita and shas achila. Talmud lomar az gzeira shava. This is the word az in both psukim for gzeira shava bishlam. So we connected both of them. So whatever applies to one applies to the other. Bishlam avodav mishkachas la. It makes sense. It makes sense. How could we have a case that you have one, not the other? Where, meaning obviously, if it comes to say that a shas achila, they have to also have a bris milah. So it comes out must be a shas shchita. They either didn't need one or they had one, or what happened? Why didn't they have one in shas achila? Once, right, you first shech the Karan Pesach and you eat it. So obviously there was no problem with shas shchita. We allowed you to do the shchita, and now the second pasuk is telling you b'shas achila, you need your sons and your avodim to have the bris milah. So what's the case? You bought them when you were shacking Karm Pesach. You didn't own these Avadim Kainim, and there were obviously no mitzvah to be mole, someone that doesn't belong to you. But when you bought them in between, right? It was Kara Pesach, you wanted some more servants to serve you at your Seder. It's a lot of work, to serve the food. So you bought them. By sons, how is that possible? This Yolid Ben Astiyal it must be your wife gave birth. You shach the Karan Pesach, and then you went to the hospital. Your wife gave birth, and then you ate the Karan Pesach. Shema Mina must be Arel Shalabizmana Havi Arelos, right? It must be that's the Torah is telling you that it's too bad, because your children, even though it's not the 8th day, you can't do a bris milah yet. When Suvin of bris milah yet, still the Arel Shalabizmana is considered an oral. You're considered an oral in that case, which lends credence to what Rashi says, that Arel is even someone who's ba'onis. This really would have bearing on this machlokas in Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. Is Arel in the Mishnah someone just an ones, or even someone who purposely did it? Would seem even an ones would be. This is really what the shaila is delving into. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Tispura. Does it make sense? Himo lo kol zachar amar Rahman v'azi karav la'aso. So the pasuk says by Karan Pesach you should do a milah to all of your sons. And then you should come shechted. V'hayla bar mehilahu. You can't give him a bris milah. Bris milah. He's not even subject to bris milah. You're not supposed to do it yet because inheriting in the 7 days, the Torah, it's a danger to do it on a young baby. Elacha mayaskina. What are we talking about? This brisa where you have the scharim, shas shchita. They were wasn't a problem of milah, and shas achila was a problem. They were already 8 days old. The problem is they had a fever, and they became cured of the Neisavle Kol Shiva. The Amar Shmuel Chalas Al Cham and Kol Shiva. You have to give him 7 days. He was born on let's say Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and then he got a fever on the 7th day. So you have to wait another 7 days till the fever goes away. And then, as a precaution, you don't want to give a bris milah when he's shasakana, when he's sick. The avin they call shiva. So that's what happened. So he became. We gave him 7 days. So therefore, he became cured. The 7 days ended right between the shchita, after the shchita, before the achila, and then you do the milah. That's what the Torah is saying. You have to do the milah before you eat the Karan Pesach. Whereas if misafra, 7 days. So why didn't you give him a bris milah in the morning of Yudalad? Why did you wait till after that doing the Pesach, after Shechach and the Pesach? The Gemara says Ba'inan, top of Ayin Aleph and Beis me'es la'es. You need, when it comes to waiting 7 days, you have to wait 7 full days, 24-hour periods. Now Tani Ludah, but Ludah says Yom Rasok Yom Valdo. The day of getting better from your fever is like the day of being born. My love, my Yom Valdo lo Ba'inan me'es la'es. Af Yom Rasok lo Ba'inan me'es la'es. Just like when it comes to the 8th day, even if the child is born, even before Shkia, right, it counts as 1 day, and you give him a bris milah 7-8 days later, even though, and you right in the morning you give him a bris milah. You don't have to wait 7 24-hour periods. So therefore, when he gets better, also it should be 7 days, even if one of them is not a 24-hour period. The Gemara says, "Lo adif yom avrasa mivaldo." All Udaman to say is that it's like it, but it's even actually one step better. Dilu yom hovaldo lo ba'ina meis la'es. When it comes to giving a bris milah, originally, if he's not sick, you don't need 24-hour periods. When it comes to healing from a fever, you would need meis la'es. Rav Papa Amar, a different way of explaining how this brisa would have a situation where you'd be able to do the shchita but not do the achila. You go into koiv le'eni li'nuka v'itbach beini beini. He had a fever, but he also, his eye was hurting him, so the fever languished on in his eye. And it only got better right between the shchita and the achila. Rav Amar going to Yao Avi ve'imo chavushim beis asurin. He says we're not talking anymore where he had a fever. He had a totally different case where his parents were in jail, right? His parents were in jail. He was born obviously 8 days before. He could do the bris milah, but his parents, and we learned from this Gemara, that not just the father has a chiyuv, but also the mother has a chiyuv to do a bris milah. That's why it says imo. They were both in this jail, so they couldn't. So they could appoint a shliach. You can make a shliach for your shchita of the Pesach. They made a shliach for the shchita of the Pesach, but the achilas Pesach you have to do it yourself. You can't appoint an emissary to eat your Karan Pesach. It's a mitzvah b'gufo. You have to put it in your mouth. Someone else's mouth doesn't count as your mouth. So And obviously you see from this Gemara that that the Torah is holding you liable. You have to, right? Apparently you can't make a shliach, right? That's what Torah is saying. They're saying you're onus, you're in the Beis Asurin. So why can't I make a shliach to do a bris meal? Then I can eat the Karban Pesach. What do you mean by Karban Pesach in jail? I'll eat it. Obviously you see that maybe you can't make a shliach to do a bris milah. It's a different discussion about the halacha, but it seems from this Gemara you can't make a shliach. Otherwise, just like make a shliach to shat the Karban Pesach, you have to make a shliach to do that. Or maybe the Gemara is saying that they chose not to do a shlichus. Whatever, that would be the way of answering that. Originally he was born, he had no genitals. He couldn't see his genitals, covered by skin. And then they ripped it open after the Shechita Pesach, before Achilas Karban Pesach, and he found out he had a male aver, he had a penis. Rav Sharvia, another answer of Sharvia gives, the child actually 8 days before Karban Pesach, he took his head outside the prosdor. Prosdor, I guess, would be the cervix, I would say, into the vaginal cavity. It didn't come out of the vagina, but the Gemara says, does a child live like this? And then it put its head back in. So therefore, technically, and then the child came out right between the shechita and the achila. The Gemara says, could a child live like this? We learned this in Siman Vav in Shulchan Aruch, that one of the things of we say in Asher Yotzar is that once a child comes out into the world, his mouth in the womb is closed, right? So it becomes open, and he breathes through it. And right, the navel cavity, which was open to get food through from the placenta in the amniotic sac, right? That becomes closed, right? The umbilical cord becomes cut off. You don't get nutrients anymore once you're born. If this didn't happen when the child was born, he wouldn't be able to live even 1 second. So once he comes into the cervix, the Gemara says his mouth is open. If he goes back in, he's going to die. He had a fever. Someone had a fever. He had a fever, the Gemara assumes. So therefore, on a fever, it's interesting. Fever helps you live. You thought fever doesn't help you. The fever is your body reacting to an infection or something like that, and keeping you alive. That's what it burns less calories. You ever have like your phone, or it goes on the battery saver mode, or your watch, my smartwatch, my Fossil smartwatch goes on the battery saver mode. It gets to 10-15%. So therefore, most functions are not used. That's what happens when you get a fever. It doesn't use most of your functions of your body. You get weak, you get in bed, it burns your excess fat, so that's what a body does. And therefore, even though a person can survive, even though it'd be hard to breathe, I don't know. The Gemara says, Ishti Adaman, who got the fever? The child got fever. Yihachi called Shiva by. Then you have to wait 7 days. Like we just said, if you have a fever, you have to wait 7 days after you recover from the fever. El Dezante Ishti the Ime, his mother had the fever, and that's what kept the child alive. And then he came out of the womb, so he was born already. And then 8 days later, he came out between the shchitas achila, between the shchita and the achila. In this case, he was chayiv in a milah because he sort of was born. Once he comes, the avra comes out of the cervix. Apparently, to consider the child considered born, even if he doesn't come out avra olam. You might say, but another answer. How do you mean heichad lo ma'avi? Or heichad ma'avi machya chaye? The Gemara says it depends whether the child cries out. Right? We say it can survive 8 days without eating. If the child, that's only when the child doesn't cry out, ma'avi. But if it does cry out, the child cries out, so then it could live. So that could be the case where it went out and went back in. If it cries out, it could still, breathe somehow inside the mother. Amar Yochanan Mishuri B'na Arel Makabel Hazah. So basically, Gemara was docha the proofs. It seems like Gemara, right, holds that someone who's not royal Lamila, Arel Shalom Bizmana, would not be considered an Arel. Meaning, before you mechuyev the mitzvah of Mila, you're an Arel. You're not considered an Arel. Be an honest, seems really like Rashi, that you're not at fault. So you're not like Rashi, you'd be like Rabbeinu Tam, because here, according to Rashi, even if you're honest, you're considered to be not able to eat truma. So the fact that Gemara keeps on pushing it away seems to indicate that it has to be worse. That an honest does not preclude someone from eating truma or bringing a Korban Pesach. Only actually shumud, like Rabbeinu Tam says. I'm going to try to prove that from the beginning of the Gemara. An Arel could get hazah, could get sprinkling of tamei mace. Let's say an Arel was tamei mace. He never bris meal, an older person. He can get hazah. If he became in contact with a dead person, you do hazah on the third and seventh day after the contact. Even though he doesn't have bris meal, we find by Yoshua they were Arelim and they got hazah. When they came into Eretz Yisrael, they crossed the Jordan River on the 10th of Nisan. Harishon Basara, Chodesh Harishon Basara lo mihili mishum chulsha da'orcha. They obviously couldn't get a bris milah on the 10th day because they were tired from their trek across the Jordan River. Hazah amos avilhu. When did they do the sprinkling of the mechatas? They're reading the Korban Pesach. They had to be Torah for the Korban Pesach. Lav kashein Arelim. Right? You have to do it not on the 7th day. You also have to do it on the 3rd day. So if they did it, if the first one was on the 3rd day, that would be Yud Aleph. The 7th day would be already Ted Vav, which would be too late for the Korban Pesach. Must be they got it before when they were Arelim. Where it says V'dilma lo Avad Pesach. Oh, maybe that year they didn't bring a Korban Pesach. They didn't have to be Torah. Lo Sakadai Telsiva Yasu as a Pesach. It says in the pasuk they did the Pesach. Maskil Amar Zutra V'dilma Pesach Abba B'tumaya. Maybe they were Tameh, but it was a Pesach when Rov Klal Yisrael was Tameh. We can bring it, right? Tumahutra b'sibor. Amalei Ravashi Tani behedya malu v'tavlu. Bryce says explicitly they did bris milah and they were tovel v'asu pischayim b'tara. It says they did either Korban Pesach b'tara. Amarav or Yitzchak Amarav l'nisa priyas milah la'Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu, even though he had bris milah, to cut off the foreskin, rolling back the foreskin, it wasn't given to him that mitzvah. Shnemar v'yisah Amar Hashem Yeshua asilcha charevo surim. He said Hashem said to him, now you do take out swords, sharp swords, and it says do it shenius, do another milah. What extra was he doing? This was after the first time when they did the milah. It's a later pasuk in Yoshua. So the Gemara said obviously did a second thing. Now Hashem was giving Yoshua the mitzvah of priya. The Gemara said v'dil mahanach del hamol. Maybe no, the pasuk's talking about the people that didn't have a bris milah in the first place. Except kimulim hayu kol yotzim cholama yeludim. It says some of the people had a bris milah and some of them didn't. So the Gemara says, "Im my shuv." Why does the pasuk say do it again? El lav lepriya must be do something else. It's a secondary action. It must be rolling back the arla. My shenis. So now once you're judging the word shuv, it says the word shenis in the pasuk also. What does that tell me? La kushe sof milah l'tchilas milah. That comes to include to compare the end of milah, which is the priya, to the beginning of milah. Ma tchilas milah ma keves. Afsof milah ma'achven bo. So the end of the priya also has to be a complete priya. It's not elayin tzitz ma'achven as hamila. When you roll back the arla, even small amounts of foreskin that remain in the place that you didn't roll back, it still prevents it from being a good milah. Basar achofes rovatara, and what is that? Meaning, even a little skin that covers rov of the atara, ve'inocha betruma. If there's still foreskin that you didn't roll back and it covers most of the corona, the tip of the penis, you can't eat truma. It's not just the majority of the circumference. It's even in one place, one little strip of foreskin that goes from the bottom of the corona to the top of the corona. It has to be rove of that has to be gone also. So it can only have a minority over even in one little piece. Bamidbar, my time alone. In the midbar, why didn't they have a bris milah? All right, we're going to stop here. Here, we'll get into the midbar why they didn't have a bris milah. And join me with Ian Ben Sion where we'll discuss interesting topic. The difference in a mumur and a mashumud. You're not going to want to miss this, how it relates to our machlokas yesterday in Rashi or Minatam. Check it out right now.